Good day. I am Peter Rony and I live in Blacksburg, Virginia. The title of this important YouTube video is Bugbook History Started in the Virginia Tech Chemical Engineering Department. I have been creating a series of YouTube videos that I call my Blacksburg Deception series. But of all of them, this is the most important, and in fact this is the one which I hope you might view first. In this video I will provide the chronology that provides evidence that my chemical engineering department started the whole Bugbook international phenomenon. Initially, I'm going to bring your attention to two words: propaganda and bait and switch. And why bait and switch? Well, on the bottom right in red, this is the bait and switch sequence. First, definition of propaganda. Which I can summarize in it's a misleading point of view. And this is the website that propagates this point of view. I've given you the URL, bugbookcomputermuseum.com. I saw it for the first time in 2009, and I have seen the revised version now in summer 2015. So, at this website, the self-appointed curator presents a political point of view that I will discuss on the next slide. Okay, here is on the left screen capture of this home page. But this bait and switch process is shown in red on the right. So basically what Larsen does, especially with his museum and his companion internet files, is advertise a bricks and mortar museum that has a point of view: Bugbook Historical Computer Museum. That's at the top. And the message is, y'all come, I'm going to talk about Bugbook history. Well, that's not really what he's talking about. If we look at the right, the top line is Bugbook Historical. So he is starting from that point, which is true. There is a Bugbook and there is history associated with it. Well, that's the bait, and here's the switch. He switches immediately to the Blacksburg group, and then to the Blacksburg Continuing Education series, and then to the fact that there were 3 masterminds, and finally to the fact that there were 75 total books. And it is the masterminds and 75 books that are the switch. So, I ask you to please consider the possibility that his entire Bugbook historical endeavor is a bait and switch propaganda. And I'm not here to pick apart this propaganda, I will do so in other series videos, but I'm here to tell you the truth of what happened and why the Bugbooks were even written. So here we start, one of, I think, a group of 5 or 6 slides. Bugbook History started in the pre-Larsen year 1973. This was a time when I didn't even know that a guy named David Larsen existed on campus. So the defining or the critical historical event was a curriculum revision of the chemical engineering undergraduate curriculum, which we started in spring 1973. An important change in this revision was the addition of an undergraduate course in electronics. I suggested such an addition, and the faculty agreed to include such a course and appointed Professors John Hassler and myself to be responsible for getting the first course inserted in our curriculum, and in fact inserted as soon as possible. Well, John and I went to the EE department and asked, I think it was Assistant Professor Tom Cabaservis, to teach a special electrical engineering course in analog instrumentation to our chemical engineering juniors. Well, Professor Cabaservis left the campus during 1973, and Professor Scott was assigned to replace him with our new course. Well, he made a critical error. He did not consult either with Professor Hassler or myself. So we were blindsided by the change in faculty member, and especially with the change in focus. Instead of analog instrumentation, he decided to teach a special course on transistor biasing. Why? Probably because he knew the subject. That would be easy to cobble up a course. Well, this was a terrible idea. And at the end of the fall course, our juniors vigorously complained to the ChE faculty. Well, I don't know if you appreciate the special qualities of undergraduate chemical engineering students. I appreciate them because I've had to teach them for 31 years. And the bottom bullet is my summary. Hell hath no fury like a group of angry undergraduate chemical engineering students. Amen to that. Okay, we had a problem, and since I was the one who proposed the new electronics requirement, I took responsibility for the debacle, and I offered to solve the problem even if I had to teach the course myself. Well, the next step was quite important. On campus, I discovered that there was an electronic for scientists chemistry laboratory course, and it was taught by David Larsen. So I went and visited him. He explained the course, showed the textbook, and showed me a typical Heath Momstad Enke laboratory station. I was impressed. and I immediately concluded that this was a suitable electronics course for our chemical engineering undergraduates. And I asked him if they could take the course, and I told him, well, we might have 30, 40, 50 students in the fall quarter. And he said, yes, I would be delighted to teach the students, but I need additional laboratory stations, and by my estimate, it will require $15,000 to purchase them. Well, I saw no problem with such a figure. I returned to my department, mentioned the figure to my faculty colleagues, and the sum landed with a thud. They said, no way. So I was back to the beginning. So what to do? Well, I had some experience with electrical engineering, and I could solve, or at least decide, what we should do. This experience consisted of a full year of electrical engineering courses during my junior year at Caltech. And the year consisted of 3 courses: resistor networks, RLC transients, and 3-phase alternating current power. Well, by 1973, I had, after my undergraduate years, I had 4 years of graduate studies at Berkeley and 6 years in industry, and I knew from the total of 10 years that my electrical engineering courses were absolutely useless to a chemical engineer. And in my research career, 6 years, I used electronic instrumentation, and in fact I used a digital multimeter and a digital printer that were interfaced to each other, and at Monsanto I was clueless as to how they worked and what was interfacing all about. So, by a process of elimination, I concluded that what we needed to teach was a laboratory course on digital electronics. My timing was excellent because at the end of '73, E&L Instruments of Derby, Connecticut had just marketed a solderless breadboard, a wonderful invention, and its companion, alternating current power DigiDesigner hardware. In my opinion, these were revolutionary products, and as I look back, I was correct in my assessment. So based on the DigiDesigner hardware, some integrated circuit chips, and some breadboarding wire, David Larsen and we scheduled a brand new chemistry course for the 1974 winter quarter, which would have only 15 chemical engineering students. Okay, fine, we said there shall be a new course. That's sort of easy to do for faculty at a university, but there's requirement, and in my case, I had to write a laboratory workbook, and I did so. And its title was Introductory Experiments in Digital Electronics. I started to write this course workbook, I think after Christmas 1973. I continued writing it for most of January 1974, and we delayed the new course until February 1974. My total manuscript, 11 experiments, 177 pages, is available at the website shown at the bottom bullet. And then the rest is history. Well, it is appropriate to answer this question. Why did I become involved in digital electronics and microprocessors? That is certainly not what I planned to do when I was hired in the chemical engineering department at Virginia Tech. Far from it. My initial expectation is that I would teach traditional chemical engineering courses, and I would do sponsored research in my area of catalysis. Well, the research started, I terminated it, and I backed into teaching of electronics and microprocessors, and that eventually became my career as a professor of chemical engineering. And after digital electron microprocessors, I took over the department's process control laboratory and spent a decade and a half teaching it. So, in summary, I became a person whom I never expected to be, and my career was completely changed by a decision to write a workbook in digital electronics for 15 chemical engineering students. That's something I never predicted would happen. So I do have one person to thank, and he is Professor Henry A. McGee, Jr., and he's well known as the founding Dean of Engineering at Virginia Commonwealth University. I have much to thank for Henry McGee because he was a believer in academic freedom. In 1974, he was surprised that I began to teach digital electronics to my students. And he was even more surprised that the following year, in 1975, I wrote a book on the Intel 8080 microprocessors. And then a year or two later, he was mystified that I wrote 2 additional laboratory textbooks on a microcomputer trainer called the MMD-1. And his overall feeling was, if I recollect, Peter, why do you want to do that? Why don't you continue pursuing your research projects on catalysis? But as a true educator, he understood that I had academic freedom to decide my career path, and as long as it didn't interfere with my primary role of teaching undergraduate chemical engineering students, I had a right to my academic freedom. That was absolutely a wonderful decision, and he was patient. From 1974 until summer 1981, because he didn't realize the coming importance of the microprocessor in all of engineering and in fact in all of society. So I thank you, and Henry, you were responsible for what what proved to be my entire academic career. That is the end of this important YouTube video. It is a long duration. I've said a lot, and I hope you've stayed with me, but I think you need to listen to this video before you understand all the many other videos in my Blacksburg Deception series, in which I flesh out the propaganda associated with the Floyd County Bugbook Historical Computer Museum. Pure propaganda, in my opinion, but since I started with the Bugbooks, in fact initiated the whole Bugbook phenomenon in 1974, I have the historical expertise to create the series of YouTube videos. Thank you, and good day.